All right. Well, we've gotten through all those wonderful acknowledgments and celebrations, and what a great job our students have done, and our staff to support them at this. It's a really good night. Board members, we're now at section 5, approval of minutes. We have 3 sets of minutes: March 6th, April the 3rd, and April the 10th.
Mr. Board Member, I move to, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, I'm the board member, the late attending board member. Move to amend, I guess it's March 6th, to include the following statement. Vince Powell expressed concern about an HR presentation in December that specifically told staff at J.N. Freeze they would be given priority for interviewing for other positions in the district since the IB program was moving. Mr. Powell felt district administration was extremely dishonest with both the staff at J.N. Freeze and the board by forcing all IB and special area teachers to leave J.N. Freeze while forcing several current staff members at Concord Middle School to transfer to J.N. Freeze, and for leaving out portions of the same presentation when sharing it with the board. Thank you.
Is there a second to support Mr. Powell's motion to amend the minutes? Hearing no second, is there a motion to approve the March 6 minutes as they are written?
So moved, sir.
Did I make a motion?
Well, I thought you just made a motion to amend the minutes. That's what I thought you just said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Rob said he didn't think I made a motion to amend the minutes, but can I make a formal motion?
Yes, you can make a formal motion.
Okay, I'll make a formal motion to amend with the comments from previous.
Is there a second to Mr. Powell's motion? There is no second. The motion dies. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as they are written?
There already is a motion and
yes, sir.
Made, Mr. Chairman. I'm not sure if there was a second, though.
And who seconded that?
I'll second.
Ms. Furtenbaugh seconds the motion to approve the March 6 minutes as written. All in favor say aye.
Well, I think there's usually discussion before the vote. Is that not correct?
Yes, we can have some discussion.
I just think that there needs to be some documentation of our discussion. It was like 20 minutes long about how dishonest administration was when they went to J.N. Freeze. I mean, if the wording is not accurate, let's change the wording, but it was a big discussion about how the presentation that was given to us was different than the presentation given to Freeze, and how those teachers were told something different than what was actually in the works. I just think that needs to be documented in the minutes. I don't know why we can't amend those minutes to reflect the dishonesty that was exhibited by our administration towards our teachers.
Well, thank you, Mr. Powell. But I disagree, and I believe that if you really go to the board meeting that night and look at what was on there, you'll find that Dr. Louder, Board Chair Barry Shoemaker, and Board Member Cindy Furtenbaugh countered Mr. Powell's assertion, stating that the original presentation provided to the J.N. Freeze Middle School staff in December, and it contained the entire allocation process. Chairman Shoemaker read from the very first page of the presentation that the staff will follow the program when it moves to another school based on certification, seniority, employment status, performance, and temporaries must reapply for positions. Chairman Shoemaker also noted that the board approved early solicitation for the magnet programs at the beginning of December, and at that time of the presentation by Dr. Louder and Ms. Jones on December 16th, the number of students signed up for the IB program at Concord Middle School was unknown. In early January, Dr. Louder shared with the board that the student sign-ups for Concord Middle School were well above the percentage required to maintain the CMS IB certification transfer. He shared that in order to assure the certification transfer of the program, it would be necessary to transfer all of the IB certified staff at J.N. Freeze Middle School to Concord Middle School. The certification transfer was dependent on retaining a specific percentage of the current J.M. Freeze Middle School staff. Failure to maintain the IB core of students and staff would result in the IB program at CMS to go through the entire IB certification process, and this would take place over several years. Ms. Furtenbaugh also noted that on side 3 of the presentation, the notation about staff following the program was made to, the notation about staff being moved to and following the program to another school was made. The reference that Mr. Powell used is located on page 4 of the presentation and takes the presentation out of context. Dr. Lauder reiterated that the presentation presented reinforced the uncertainty that existed around the sign-ups for the IB magnet programs, and there would not be any information until January at the earliest. The staff was all given potential options that were available for movement to fill vacancies at the very beginning in December 16th. So I believe that was in the discussion, and we countered what you said because I think that you were disingenuous in saying that they tried to hide information, but they gave us the entire presentation, and the presentation stands where it is.
Okay, that's fine, and if you believe that, you go right ahead. But you're not a teacher at Freeze who got forced to be moved to Concord Middle, and you're not a special area teacher at Concord Middle who was forced to go to Freeze. And so if you want to believe what you believe, that's fine. But I just want to make sure it goes on record that when we lie to our teachers, like we did, they leave, and that's just what happens.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. Mr. Harrison, would you like to say something, sir?
My understanding of how minutes are compiled boils down to this, that the minutes that we produce for our meetings follow Robert's Rules of Order, and Robert's Rules of Order explicitly states that minutes should indicate what a board did as a board and not what was said in a board meeting, that a board's formal, legal, official document of its minutes should cover what was done, not what was said. And that I find that everywhere that I find groups and organizations using Robert's Rules of Order, which our own policies reference and which give us authority to create minutes, that the minutes should cover what was done by the board as a whole, not what was said.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. Mr. Walter?
I do think we go a little bit more than that in our historically to give a little more detail, and I'm okay with that. I don't know if there's a way to express a little bit more on what your argument is, but in a, I guess, an appropriate manner or appropriate summary. But as it is, it does say that you were against that, and you were exactly where is it? I lost the spot again, but it says you're concerned, which you did express.
Well, the concerns are expressed, and that has been expressed. But like I say, concerns were expressed, but as he's stating distrust or deception. Intent, I mean, the intent was there in saying it was intentional deception. And I don't feel that that was the case. A lot of facts were not known. Enrollment was not going to be known until January, and staff tried to say we weren't going to know until students signed up, and the program was, if we were going to move the program, everybody had to move. Mr. Powell saying he thinks the deception was intentional, and he's wanting to say that, and that's one person's, or one member of this board's thought. Now, we're all supposed to act as a board in a majority, and I don't think minutes should be one person's opinion. I'm asking for a legal. We're supposed to be a majority. maybe our attorney can kind of give us a ruling on this.
Well, the board minutes, the board as a whole decides what those minutes are going to read. So that's right. The board as a whole adopts them. Our policy, we have a policy on preparation of minutes. The superintendent is responsible. As you know, he's delegated that to Ms. Monroe, who does her best to take good notes during the meeting of what people say. But it's not a transcript. People can watch television. The minutes are not designed to be a transcript of what people have said. The focus is on the action. The policy says an abstract of the discussion. So the idea is to kind of summarize what is said, who objected, so someone reading it could know who is for something and who is against it, but it is not a transcript. So, and that's why generally the role under the policy is you have your board clerk prepare the minutes, circulate the minutes, and then the board would approve them. And if someone wants to, they can certainly move to amend them. But I don't want anyone to think it's supposed to be kind of a transcript or a verbatim transcript. We've not tried to do that, and that's not really the purpose of the minutes.
And normally in the past, if a board member has objected, we usually say, we object and the reason we object. But we normally don't go into a big reason why we object. And usually there's no problem with that. But, saying we are, assaulting our staff or anything like that, we usually don't get into something like that. And I don't think that's a good practice to get into.
Mr. Chairman, if I can add to, I'll never hold a candle to our legal advice, but what I can find on the internet might be useful, but it is relevant from a legal firm, that minutes should not contain comments and never be a transcript of every statement made by attendees or by board members. Recording extensive comments become evidence for defamation and other potential claims against the board, and minutes should reflect decisions and general reasons for decisions, not conversations or opinions.
Thank you, Mr. Harrison. I will absolve my right to sue. Thank you.
All right.
Not at all aware of what's meant by that, sir.
All right, it's time to call the question. Board
Don't
members
worry,
all in-
David, I will not sue you.
Board members all in favor of the March 6 minutes as written, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, that motion carries 6-0. All right, now we need to go to the rest of the minutes for April the 10th, April the 3rd and April the 10th, and I believe Mr. Walter had sent us an email last night.
Yes.
And Rob, do you have those
I had two changes that I'd
changes?
like considered. Again, this is on fourth paragraph of page 4, between the word, it says unless a person is using leave time, and I stated unless the person is using approved leave time.
Okay.
And then the second part was somewhere, and again, I'm not a wordsmith.
You didn't send it to everyone?
No, we're only supposed to send it to the board chair.
Oh,
We didn't see it.
can forward it.
We didn't see the changes that Rob sent?
He sent them last night
You want to wait
about
till next
midnight.
month? That's fine with me.
You sent my changes out, which is fine.
Yeah, but I
we
didn't
don't-
I didn't get
we just
Mr.
pick and
Walters
choose.
until this morning when I opened my email, and I didn't
That's
have time
okay.
to send it out.
We get
so.
email all throughout the day, just
Rob,
we'd
April
prefer you
3rd?
not pick and choose which ones you send out, Barry.
It was on the fourth paragraph of page 4,
Of April 3rd?
April 3rd, correct. And again, we could, if you want to wait a month and approve them next month,
No,
I'm
we can
fine
do
with
that.
that too.
Just tell me real quick where it's at
Again, fourth paragraph on the fourth page.
on the 4th page. Oh, okay, got it.
And then the second part of that was at the end on page 5. I'd like something, and this is just my wording of it. Mr. Walter expressed he voted against this motion, not on the merits of the request, but because this was not an action item on the meeting agenda nor an emergency. He felt the vote should take place at the next business meeting to allow notice and input from public before a vote is taken.
Which is an untrue statement, but
Was it,
it was an emergency because we had to get it on the May agenda for the,
okay.
so it was,
Well,
so
in my
I have to
opinion, it was
disagree
not, but
with
that's
that.
okay. You can, that was what I expressed, why I voted the way I voted.
I mean, but you can state your opinion, but it was needed to be put on there, so I have to disagree with that.
Yeah, as long as that was really in the transcript, that's fine. I just wanna make sure if we're gonna alter with what specific people said, that that's what the tape says.
A little ironic that we're okay with altering to specific comments now, isn't it?
Well, we can wait till next month.
All right, each of you has a copy of that email. All right, I've sent out the email with Rob's comments so that you all have them. If you care to open them up, we can go to the April 10th minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the April 10th minutes as written?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Furtenbaugh, Mr. Walter. Any discussion on those?
The tenth aren't changed, right?
10 aren't changed, we got a motion to approve them as written. All in favor of those approved as written, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. And that motion carries 6-0. All right, on the April 3rd minutes, Mr. Walter just added the word approved because that was what he had said. And then he added the words that he felt that the appeal was too. He expressed that he voted against the motion on the merits of the request because this was not an action item.
Not on the merits of the request.
Not on the merits of the request, but because this was not an action item on the agenda, nor an emergency. And Ms. Monroe, I'll send you a copy of this and you can have that. How's that?
And he's saying that's what he said on the tape,
I expressed that why I voted the way I voted.
but you're saying you said that?
Mr. Walter expressed he voted against the motion, not on the merits, but because this was not an action item on the meeting agenda nor an emergency. Felt the vote should take place at a business meeting to allow notice and input from the public before the vote is taken. It was a procedural objection, basically.
Right.
Just note the procedural objection. I mean, I have no problem with that.
That was all it was. And I remember him making that comment.
Yeah, I remember him, yeah.
Yeah, I think to Mr. Powell's point, we need to be careful about adding quotes. I think it's a procedural objection and just leave it at that.
That's not a quote.
That's a summary.
It's a summary.
Yeah, that what I'm saying is to, and I'm red over here, so I think we have too many buttons hit. Okay. I think it needs, we need to watch the quote, and we've gone through this cycle over the years of board members feeling there wasn't enough and then turning into transcripts, and I think it is truly supposed to be a business summary. As was mentioned, you know, our meetings are all recorded. Anyone can watch them on YouTube at any time, I believe, and see what was said.
We just approved minutes on the 10th that says, Mrs. Carpenter noted that she feels that the mental health funding should be higher priority, but she does not have support of this board. That is why she is voting against the budget. Type of thing. It's a summary of why I voted against.
So do we have a motion to approve the April 3rd minutes with the changes Mr. Walter has proposed?
You want a motion?
Yeah.
I'm making.
Oh, okay, well, that's what I was waiting on. I needed a motion. Thank you, Rob. All right, is there a second to Mr. Walter's motion to approve the April 3rd minutes as written, as adjusted, amended by him?
This is from Mr. Powell.
Mr. Powell makes the second? Okay. All right, any more discussion on this item? Hearing none, all in favor of amending the April 3rd minutes?
And what was
Say-
the other one? Was that changing that?
It was the one, he just
Just
added
that
the word
one.
approved, and then he added the procedural change.
But he was adding that to the policy? No.
No, he just said,
Oh,
in the write-up of the minutes, he had objected and he wanted the word approved in there. unless a person is using approved leave time, which was what he was asserting that needed to be in the policy.
Oh, that need to be in, but it wasn't put in the policy.
Right, yeah. All right. Any more discussion? Hearing none, all in favor of approving the minutes for April 3rd as amended, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, that motion carries and the minutes are approved. That moves us to our number 6, which is reports. And currently, I don't have anything to report. I'll leave it up to Ms. Reimer to do the reporting for us.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and thank you. Let me begin by wishing all of our teachers a very happy Teacher Appreciation Week. Tomorrow is National Teacher Appreciation Day, and I want to express my gratitude for all of our wonderful teachers and all you do for our students every day. I also want to say a special word of congratulations to our newly selected District Teacher of the Year, Miss Paige Norris. Miss Norris is a kindergarten teacher at Rocky River Elementary School. We announced her selection last week at a special ceremony at the Cabarrus Arts Council's Davis Theater. Congratulations, Miss Norris. Earlier this evening, we discussed how community support is a large part of what makes CCS such a wonderful place. Our community partners were quite generous in helping us with our Teacher of the Year celebration. A special thank you goes out to our Gold Apple sponsors, AXA Advisors, Cabarrus County Education Foundation, the Great Wolf Lodge, Greater Charlotte Automobile Dealers Association, Miriam and Robert Hayes Charitable Trust, and Sea Life of Concord. This Wednesday, we also celebrate our school nurses. We are grateful for our longtime standing partnership with Cabarrus Health Alliance and are thankful that we're able to have a nurse in every school for our students. Looking ahead a little, Saturday, May 13th, we will celebrate Cabarrus Kannapolis Early College High School Class of 2017 at their graduation ceremony. We look forward to recognizing all their accomplishments. This weekend's early college graduations mean it won't be long before we're celebrating with our other high schools at graduation ceremonies in June. Please visit our graduation information site for all the latest, greatest news about how we'll be celebrating the class of 2017. Later this month, students will begin our end-of-the-year testing. I encourage all of our students to stay focused as we move into the end of the school year. Remember to get plenty of rest the night before, eat a healthy breakfast the morning of, and take your time as you're working through the exams. Thank you.
Oh, Ms. Carpenter has something to say. Thank you, Ms. Reimer.
And as a reminder, if people can volunteer to be mentors, not mentors, proctors, not mentors, proctors, please volunteer at your local schools, because I know every year a lot of the schools will call me and they really need people to be proctors. That's very, very important. So when you get those phone calls from those schools, please do it, because it really, really helps them.
Can you let them know what it takes to be a proctor?
All you have to do is contact your school and say you're willing, and they'll give you all the information that you need. Our teachers are recruiting, our administrators are recruiting, so just call your local school.
Thank you. All right, this come to the section 7, which is our guest speakers that address the board. And then currently, I do not have any cards for speakers. However, in accordance with Board Policy 2310, revised by the board on May 11th, 2015, a part of each business meeting will be set aside for citizens to address the board. Sign-up cards will be available for any individual or group to indicate their desire to address the board. Speakers must hand a completed card to the board clerk no later than 6 p.m., the normal start time of the regularly scheduled monthly business meeting. The board chair will decide the time devoted to public comments. Speakers must complete a contact card including their name, their group name if it's applicable, address, and phone number, and list the general education-related topic of their presentation for the board minutes. We do not have any speakers tonight, so that will carry us to number 8, which is the approval of the consent agenda. We have a number of items on the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as it is written? So moved. Ms. Furtenbaugh makes the motion, and I heard Mr. Harrison second that. Is there any discussion on our consent agenda? Hearing none, all in favor of the consent agenda, approving the consent agenda as written, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. That motion carries 6-0. And that carries us to the approval of policy 1310/4002 on the first reading. Ms. Reimer is moving up to the podium.
No, I'm ready. We spoke about these last week. You guys asked to put them on action, so we're open for whatever the board would like for us to.
Board members?
And since, Mr. Chairman, since I was the one who asked for these policies to be put on action, our attorney, Mr. Enriquez, did confirm that the proper policy that would protect the student records from family members who may be curious but are not the custodial parent or the guardian is policy 4700 for student records, and that is now cited in these policies. It was either there before or has been added. So 4700 seems to be the correct policy to ensure the privacy of our student data.
That's correct. 4700 is titled Student Records.
Right. So I would make a motion that we approve this policy for 9.1.
So, second.
All right. Ms. Furtenbaugh makes the motion. Mr. Harrison seconds it. All in favor, or any more discussion on this? Excuse me? Seeing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, that is approved. And now we move to policy 1320/3560. And that is the first reading. Ms. Reimer is there to answer any questions.
So
Yeah.
all of these policies are linked together. They all put on the action agenda for the exact same reason. So we have linked all of those with
Right.
4700.
And we could, if the board, I guess, wanted to, could we combine 9.2 through 9.6 in an approval? Although they are a variety of first and seconds.
All right, 9.2, 9.3, 4, 5, and 6. All of these have the exact same requirement to add policy 4700 to them?
They're not exactly the same, but they're,
You can leave out 9.5 and 9.6, I think we should discuss those.
so
Okay.
9.2, 9.3, and 9.4 are the
All right.
same.
Is there a motion to approve 9.2, 9.3, and 9.4 as they are written?
I'll make that motion.
Okay, Mr. Walter will make the motion for those three policies. Those policies are policy 1320/3560, policy 1400 on the first reading, and policy 5000. Mr. Walters made the motion to approve all three of those policies as they are written. Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Harrison makes the second. All in favor of approving those three policies, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, that motion carries 6-0, and now we are on 9 point. Pollen time. Now we're at 9.5, approval of policy 2500 on the second reading, and that is the hearings before the board. Board members, what is your pleasure?
I move to approve this policy after striking the last two sentences of section 8 on page 3.
Section 8.
Which is essentially the changes.
Yes.
That would just,
That was the only thing that we put in it. I won't agree to that. That was why we bought it back. And it was because of what, excuse me.
Yes, ma'am.
That was why we bought the policy there, was because of things that has happened this past year, of documents being brought to this board and us having to stop the hearing, read the things, or information being brought to us that at the last minute or during there, and like I say, us not having time to, go over it, and or witnesses coming that we didn't know about, and nobody being aware of it. And I just think this is something that we needed to do. Now, we can put this up for a vote. If it fails, then hey, it fails. But I think we ought to acknowledge this and see if it does.
We hear a lot of talk about being more inclusive than less inclusive, and I think that your comments last week about making sure that we get the right information and all the information and being able to make the right decision with as much information as possible, I think those were spot on, and I don't know that being restrictive in this area serves us well. I think that, we should be able to listen to any information that is brought before, regardless of the time frame, and then make our best decision. I don't feel like restricting it is the best way to go. And, when the packets get mailed out and information is given at the last minute, and we get the packet, 3 days before, and then the whoever might be looking at information for the first time in these packets, like a parent is mailed it the same time we are. If they get it 3 days before, then they need a little opportunity to kind of read it and decide if they need to include something else. So that kind of factors into my decision to want to eliminate this piece.
Well, I'm not restricting it, I'm just saying, get all the information to us, and then we're saying,
needs a second.
if we
having
don't,
debate.
then we may have to postpone the hearing. I want to have every bit of information I can possibly have, and I want to make sure both parties, administration and everybody, has the information, the same information. And that's what I'm asking for. Everybody has the same piece, that we have everything that everybody has. And that's what I'm asking for, that everybody has, that the person, we're supposed to be, the board is supposed to have everything everybody has. And I want to make sure everybody has that. And I don't want anybody to be at a disadvantage, and that's why I wanted this in here.
Unless it's 2 days before, then you're okay with the disadvantage.
No, I'm saying 2 working days, that we all have it, and that we can have the hearing and everything.
Mr. Powell, you made a motion, did you not? Okay. We need to get a second to his motion before we have any more discussion, so. Is there a second to Mr. Powell's motion to strike the last 2 sentences at the end of Section 8 of Policy 2500?
Okay, well, for discussion purposes, I'll second the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. All right, now we can continue with our discussion.
Yeah, Mr.
Sorry.
All right, Ms. Furtenball?
Yeah, I would just like to comment that I think actually having a requirement in here of 2 days, 2 work days prior, is for the benefit not just of the board, but for the staff to get their case organized, for the plaintiff to get their case organized, and it gives sort of a time measure that everybody's prepared when you come to the hearing. And I think that's important. And if the family who is grieving, or the staff member, and that's the purpose of the hearing, they still have time to come speak in person, and they can present anything they want new in that 10 or 15 minutes that they're allotted. So it doesn't prevent them or silence anyone from saying information. It just says that anything that's going to be documented for pre-reading needs to be submitted. So I think we are being fair to everyone. And for that reason, I guess I would like to leave the wording in there.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, there's nothing burdensome about this 2-day requirement. It makes it fair for everyone, and by the time something comes to the board, it has gone through level 1, 2, and we're the 3rd level. The documentation has been established and accumulated and compiled for a month or 2 or 3 or 5 months before that moment, and to bring something to us without a heads up is awkward at the least, and there's just absolutely nothing burdensome about this request for 2 days' notice for additional information. I think the policy is fine as it is presented here, in support of Ms. Carpenter.
Mr. Walter?
And then the last sentence of that paragraph says, upon receipt of any new information, the board may, but doesn't have to, reschedule the hearing to prevent a threat of substantial unfairness. So with the word may, I think that gives us the flexibility to accept it or not. So I am okay with it too. I mean, if you're coming before a hearing, you should be prepared. And if you're prepared, you already have your documentation. And like you said, they can still submit it, and then it's still going to be our discretion on what we're going to do with that.
All right. Any more discussion on this item, Ms. Carpenter?
And one of the things when you can say, the policy committee went over this for quite a while, and how many times has this come back to our board? What, two or three times?
Yes, ma'am.
Before we did this, so it went through the policy committee quite a bit, and we agreed on this.
All right. Any more discussion? All right, let's vote on this. We have the motion before us to strike the last two sentences in Section 8 of Policy 2500 by Mr. Powell, seconded by Mr. Walter. All in favor of these changes, say aye. All opposed, say nay. Nay. So that is,
Move to accept or adopt the policy as written, Mr. Chairman.
all right. Mr. Harrison makes a motion to adopt the policy as written. Is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Ms. Carpenter makes the second. Any discussion on this? Let's vote. All in favor of approving policy 2500 as written, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, that motion carries 5-1. It moves us on to policy 7720 on the second reading, and this is on the political activities, employee political activities. Board members, I'll open this up to any conversation. Mr. Powell?
Mr. Chairman, make a motion to approve this policy with the addition on page 1, under political activities, section 1, take place during school time unless a person is using approved leave time. Everything else is the same.
I'll second that.
On page 1, where was your insertion, Vince? I was trying to follow it on here. I
On the
missed-
screen in front of you,
Yeah.
item 1, take place
Okay,
during...
item 1, okay. All right, Mr. Powell makes a motion, and it was seconded by Mr.
Where is he putting the leave time?
Yeah, Mr. Powell has made a motion to amend the item number 1 under political activities will not. Number 1 says take place during school time unless on approved leave, right? All right, is there other discussion around this addition to item number 1?
Well, I have a question. If we're going to use something, a phrase like that, about approved lead time, do we need to reference another policy at the bottom of here that is about how lead time is approved? Is there a policy?
We do have several policies on leave. I think when this first came up in the work session, I think the concern was creating some expectation of seeking leave specifically for engaging in political activities, which
Because it could be a school
depends
day.
on whether it's a school day or not, and it may be a school day on the election. So I think that was the concern. That's why the policy committee, after discussion, did not recommend inclusion of that language because of that issue. So, but we do have, to answer your question, we do have several policies that address leave and what kinds of leave can be allowed.
What I worry about is if we add that approved lead time, is that there could be the appearance that person A is campaigning for candidate 1, person B is campaigning for candidate 2, that there's somehow a preference on who gets approval when it really has to do with individual situations, whether that person has a personal day remaining or not. I
Then
worry
adding
that
those
it could-
references to those policies makes sense.
What's that?
Then adding those references would make sense.
Yeah, but I don't know if there's if there's conclusive wording in any policy references, but I understand why it's not good to get into this word game of approved lead time, because then you're putting a principal in a situation where they're having to make a decision, and it may be very clear for them, but all of a sudden you throw them in the middle of a political discussion, and they don't need to be in the middle of that. So Mark, is there something?
I mean, so the challenge is, so I'm looking here at policy 7510, which is our leave policy. Individuals are allowed to take personal leave. However, personal leave may not be taken on required teacher work days, so which are typically your school days. So that's the tension that the policy committee was worried about is we do allow personal leave, we don't allow it on a school day. Does this now change that to say you can get personal leave if an election's being held on a school day to engage in those political activities, which is why we thought just leaving it as school time doesn't create some potential change in our existing policy on when you can use your personal leave days. So I think that was our. Well, that's right. There's a discussion about when it's capped and under what circumstance, and it may vary too depending on what type of employee and the position the employee has, whether they're a teacher, whether they're somebody else. So generally, the supervisor has authority to approve leave in half-day or full days. But I think we just didn't, I think we're fine with the leave policy we have and the way the leave is implemented. The concern was here, are we creating a separate rule or some expectation that you have a right to take personal leave for political activities, but you don't have a right to take personal leave to go to the doctor or for the other personal leave, which you don't have to specify a reason for. And I think that's why, after working with our superintendent for human resources and council, we said that we probably don't need to introduce this as a different category that might be entitled to some more protection than other personal leave. So we have our leave practice, but that's why we did not think it was potentially confusing. Now, I mean, obviously, there's a motion. The board could say, we're going to try to treat this differently than other leave, but I think then you put staff position in a position of trying to decide whether to approve or not approve for working on election day if schools are open, and are they going to allow teachers or other school staff to leave to go work? And I think that was a concern that I think the administration had.
I mean, I think then we have a paragraph in front of that, and all this statement does is support that paragraph in front of the one statement that we're adding. I mean, otherwise you wouldn't say will not be infringed upon due to employment in the school district. Otherwise you are.
I think just like in private employment, you can't infringe an employee's political right to be politically active, but you can say you have to show up to work even though it's an election day. You have a right to go vote, but you can't say I've got a right to go work the polls on election day. If you're scheduled to work that shift and you don't work a shift on election day.
Yeah, well, that's why it would have to go through whatever the policy is for approved leaves.
Okay. If a supervisor decides to grant leave in one case, but then not grant leave in another case, and references this policy because it's not specifically said approved leave, I think we are infringing upon the employee. I think that it needs to be spelled out very clearly. I think that's the whole point of this subset here of 4 points, is to spell out how not to infringe. It doesn't go and start stripping power or authority from the employee. It spells it out nice and clear. And I think all we're doing or attempting to do is to make it more clear. You have to get approved leave or you can't participate.
But I think you throw the supervisors in the middle of decisions and feeling pressured, because keep in mind, especially in the election of school board candidates, those principals eventually report up to the superintendent, and the superintendent reports to the board. So you put them in the middle of a situation that could be potentially, I'll say, difficult. The person may not have the right category of leave time, but the principal or other supervisor feels pressured because it's a board member who's running for reelection perhaps. So I think it's better just to leave it as is personally. I was kind of going back and forth on whether approved leave time, but I'm concerned that you're putting someone in the middle of potentially a political decision.
Board members can't be employees in the district.
I'm not saying board members be employees. I'm saying a supervisor, a principal perhaps, approving or not approving lead time for a school employee who wants to work a certain board member's campaign. If that principal says no, he or she may feel like they're looking bad in the eyes of whoever that school board member is running for reelection. So I think if we just say not during school time, anyone else, as Mark said, with any regular job, you can go vote before, you can go vote at lunch, you can vote after, you can hang out at the polls from 3 o'clock when you get out of school until they close at 7:30. So there's time to do those activities if you do have a school day.
The only other thing I would add, we're not recommending any change to that language. In other words, paragraph 1 has been that way for at least 6 years. It may have been even the earlier revision. So you see the change in red. I understand the discussion, but to the extent I'm not aware of problems under the existing definition, I think our concern was you may create problems by changing it, so.
We
the
had
policy
an
as-
issue, that's why we're bringing it up.
Mr. Walter, I think we mentioned that once before, and we're not aware as administration of any issues with any principals and/or teachers or employees that were not allowed or didn't have proof. So we would love to be able to look at that situation that you mentioned.
Mr. Chairman, I really do believe that the policy, the way it is written, does a very good job of segregating personnel and HR matters apart from the purpose of the policy, which is political speech and activities by employees. I think it does a good job of clarifying that and not commingling political speech and activities with personnel matters.
Any more discussion on this? We have a motion before us to add to item number 1 on the first page, take place during school time unless on approved leave time. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say nay. Nay. So it is a hung motion. It's 3-3. We'll need to have it, the motion was to add to item number 1, political activities will not take place during school time unless on approved leave time. Or approved leave. Is that correct? Approved leave or leave time?
Unless using approved leave time, I think is what was stated.
Unless a person is using approved leave time.
Employee uses, that's way.
Approved leave time.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a suggestion.
I mean, a tie vote is, I know we usually have 7, so we don't have a lot of tie votes, but a tie is the motion fails if it doesn't carry a majority under our policy in terms of the parliamentary procedure. So the motion to amend fails, and obviously the board could decide to entertain other motions. The board could decide to wait and do something at a different date, but that's you need a majority to adopt a motion, so a tie vote is a failed
Mr.
vote.
Chairman, I'd like to suggest and ask my fellow board members if we could approve this with the purpose of the change.
Yes.
And why it even came before us, so that it can get checked off and implemented into our policy. And then suggest anyone, I believe, Mr. Enriquez, anyone who votes for the motion can bring it back to the table. Is that true? Under Robert's rules?
Under, yeah,
Anybody who
that
votes
in
for the
favor
motion
of-
can bring it back to the table.
For reconsideration?
Yes.
Yes, that is correct.
So we could bring it back, perhaps at next month's business meeting, whatever, but I would like to, I guess, for staff sanity, get the wording that is not being contested, get that approved.
Is that a formal motion on your part to approve it with
Yes,
the
I would like
current
to make a
writing
motion.
and allow it to be brought back for further consideration by the board at a later date?
Yes, and maybe someone will have an idea on how it can be updated without putting it on the supervisor, so.
I think what you're stating, this policy does put it on the supervisor. You're already doing that with this policy. I think that there is ambiguity here that makes it very conflicting for supervisors now. They may want to approve time, but they may not for some reason. But if they look at this and they say, well, I can't infringe upon their right to participate, and they have approved time, approved leave time available, but it's not clearly stated here. I think that making it clear would help supervisors in actuality. Just going ahead and stating it, it's broken down in 4 other ways here. Let's go ahead and just make it clear so that it takes the supervisor out of it. I agree with you. I would like to take the supervisor out of it and just make it, put it back on the board. Give that right back to the employee and let them participate if it's not during school time or they have approved leave time. Seems very empowering to our employees and very, I guess there's a little protection there to our supervisors. So I think maybe that would help them.
Mr. Chairman, point of order, we still don't have a second on this motion, and we're going into discussion.
Well, did I get a motion?
Yes.
Okay. So Ms. Furtenbaugh made a motion to approve this policy
And may I
as
second?
written and send it back to, and allow it to be brought back up for further discussion on item number 1.
With the additional wording?
Well, whatever. Yeah. You and Vince and Carolyn can bring it back up whenever you, and we could put it on the agenda for the next meeting if you want to with the additional, and talk about this additional wording. Personally, I think that because of the ambiguity of approved leave time, and because you have several different types of leave, that we've got to be careful about how we define approved leave and make sure that, it's done the proper way, because there's personal leave and those types of things. So, I think we got to be precise about how we do it.
Well, it just shows you don't understand what working in the district. There's only a few types of leave time. It's very clear to employees, their leave in the district.
So I'm reviewing procedurally, I'm looking again at our procedural policy 2340. We do have a section that says renewal of a motion defeated may be renewed at any subsequent meeting unless the board passes a motion to prevent further reconsideration. So what I read that to mean that at a subsequent meeting, Mr. Powell's motion to amend this political activity policy could be re-raised at another meeting. So you could adopt the language in red, and then at a subsequent meeting, when you had 7 members here, Mr. Powell could again renew his motion to add the leave language, and you could take it up at that time if you wished. I think it would actually be renewal of the motion to amend. So there are different procedures, but that would be my suggestion as the cleanest, since there's been a motion made and seconded that failed by a 3-3 vote. At the next meeting, when 7 members are present, then motion could be renewed. You could put it on the agenda and decide it again.
Would it not be to reconsider?
That might be, if you did not take action, I think then it would be a motion to resume consideration. You can actually, our policy has, you could make a motion to defer all consideration, which would be the equivalent of laying on the table under Robert's Rules of Order, and then you'd have a motion within 100 days under our policy to bring it back up. But that would be typically if no action were taken. I'm suggesting if the board adopted Ms. Furtenbaum's motion and approved the red amendments, Mr. Powell would still be in order to bring up a renewal of his motion at a later meeting under under the renewal of the motion provision of 2340. So it wouldn't really be reconsideration of what's been brought before you is actually the recommended policy change in red. So I don't think you'd actually be reconsidering that, but I think it'd be in order to renew a motion that previously failed.
Yeah, but if it's approved as this way, then would he not say he wants to reconsider this motion?
Only if he wanted to disagree with the red language. I think his original amendment, it would be an amendment that would be relate to the black portion that's not changed. I think he could just simply renew his motion.
Oh, okay. He would have to vote in favor of this motion.
No, what I'm saying is I don't think it matters how he votes. He could vote in favor or against Ms. Furtenbaum's motion. He would still be able to come forward later and say, we had that vote on my motion to amend, I want it heard again, and then you could do it again. And again, the purpose here would be, since Mr. Furr's not here, you could have an additional board member, so you could take it up at that time.
All right, Ms. Furtenbaum made a motion, Mr. Harrison, I believe, seconded that motion, to approve the current policy being revised, 7720 for political activities, to include the red portion that was already written out. And is there any more discussion on that? Hearing none, all in favor of approving that motion to approve 7720, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay.
Nay.
Did you vote, Carolyn?
Yeah, but we could get it going,
Okay, yeah,
right?
okay, so you voted. All right, so that motion does pass 4-2. I couldn't hear you. You had your head away from me.
Okay.
All right, that moves us, that motion passes 4-2. Mr. Powell, Mr. Carpenter, and Mr. Walter, you all have the opportunity to bring this back up for discussion on item number 1. And
And now, I want to verify, when it's brought back up, it'll be brought back up as what?
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. So under policy 2340, actions by the board, item number 8 says, a motion that is defeated may be renewed at any subsequent meeting unless a motion to prevent reconsideration has been adopted. And the board has not adopted such a motion to prevent reconsideration. So I believe Mr. Powell's motion to amend to add that leave language would be in order at another meeting. And it probably makes sense to just include it on the agenda for the next meeting.
And it does not matter how they voted?
It does not matter how he voted, because that was an amendment. That was an amendment that did not pass. It was
Okay.
it was 0-0, so it's not.
So it does not matter if he voted in the negative or the positive? Okay.
It does not. I mean, he did in fact oppose the one that just passed, but in my view, it wouldn't matter how he voted on
Okay.
the recently passed motion. Right, or you voted. Anyone, I think
But
the
it wouldn't
motion
matter how
could be
you voted either. It's a brand new, fresh slate vote.
That's right. That's right. It's a new vote on the addition to that policy.
this moves us to the board meeting calendar, and Mr. Walter had made a suggestion.
You want me to make the motion, or?
Yeah, don't make a motion yet, just.
Don't make a motion. Mr. Walter had made a suggestion that the work session on February the 5th, is that correct?
That's
Rob?
correct.
He sent that to me late last night, that the work session on the 5th be held at Mount Pleasant Middle School. Mr. Walter, I'll let you discuss. Huh? One of the new.
The new Mount Pleasant Middle School, we have an enthusiastic invitation from the staff there to hold a meeting or work session there, and I would suggest inviting the commissioners from Mount Pleasant to join us for at least a portion of that meeting to share the things that are going on in Mount Pleasant.
And Mr. Shoemaker, I brought up about, I'm just gonna double check the calendar here. I think the budget work session on Tuesday, March 27th is in Holy Week.
Yes, it is.
Is what?
Was that a possibility
It's
of
the
moving
week
that?
before Easter, known as Holy Week.
I was just double checking when Easter was.
Yes, you're correct.
What is?
It's the,
Is Easter-
it's the Tuesday before Easter,
Is Easter, April 1st?
yes.
I'm sorry?
How about the 20th? Well, yeah, how about the 20th, March the 20th? It's a Tuesday night. March 2018? Is that what we're looking at? Oh,
Well, when is spring break?
spring break is
It's the
this
week after.
This week here, and our board meeting starts on the 9th and the 16th.
Okay,
So our board meeting's already moved.
Yeah,
okay.
the 20th would be fine. All right, board members, we have two potential dates. We have March the 20th for the budget meeting. And then we have February the 5th with a location change to Mount Pleasant Middle School. And so no one has made a motion at this point. Are there any other dates that anyone has looked at that they were thinking that they might want to revise at this point?
Rob, do you want to make the motion, just do both?
Okay.
All right, well, I'd like to bring forward a motion to hold the March 5th meeting at the new Mount Pleasant Middle School. And then we want to adjust the March 27th meeting to the March 20th, is that correct?
Yep.
I'll second that.
Okay, now we go into some discussion. Is there any discussion on these two dates in the motion?
So, Mr. Chairman, for March the 5th, are we again proposing as we have?
February the 5th.
February the 5th, beg your pardon, of 2018, are we proposing to hold the meeting at Mount Pleasant?
Yes.
So in the past, we've done that to the tune of about $2,000, I believe, if I recall the roundabout amount was $2,000 of an expense of county money to pick up the whole shebang, so to speak, and take it on a road show, which has great value to the public, but is a tremendous effort on the part of staff to do so. I'm perfectly fine with moving the budget date to the 20th, if it would not pinch the budget committee an extra week to be ahead of the week. But I'll vote against the whole thing because the proposal to spend that money at another location is unnecessary, and it's been proven time and again that it's unnecessary and awkward and just a tremendous effort that the board should not try to replicate. I just don't see the purpose of spending that kind of public money to go to a meeting when the meeting can be held here and not have to spend that extra setup expense.
All right, thank you. Mr. Powell?
Mr. Harrison, I agree with you. I would like to ask if we could amend the amendment, or the motion, to exclude the broadcast equipment and just have a regular, non-broadcast meeting at Mount Pleasant Middle, but also to include all of our work session meeting arrangements to be moved back up to the podium, so we don't have to go through the extra hassle like of putting the work session stuff down here. I think that piece of it is also a hassle on staff, and it's hard to hear and see, and it's different every week, and I think just being up here would be better.
It sounds like we've got three different motions going on here.
Well, there's one motion on the table already.
Yeah, we have a motion. Mr. Powell, is your amendment that you would like to have not only the video in the Mount Pleasant not be, that we don't have video in the Mount Pleasant meeting on February the 5th,
Yes, sir.
but in addition, you would like to restore our work sessions to our current seating?
Yes, sir.
That's what your motion is, okay.
I guess I'm just requesting to add that to the original motion.
Seating. All right, well, Mr. Powell has made a motion. Is there a second to his motion? There is no second. Mr. Powell, I agree with you, and you and I are thinking correctly, at least it's the same way on the work session for the 5th. And I agree that perhaps we could suspend the television activity or the recording for the 5th, so that if we do invite the commissioners from Mount Pleasant, it could be more of an opportunity for us to have dialogue and friendly discussions and less structure, even though we would have structure for our meeting, but it would give us a lot more opportunity to have a little bit more of a free flow. So my motion would be that we would amend the motion to suspend the recording of that particular meeting at the March 5th, gosh, David, you got me saying that, at the February 5th work session.
And Mr. Chairman, are there?
Do I?
I'll second his
Okay.
motion.
And
I'll
Mr.
second his.
Which one, mine?
Well, that what he just.
Well, wait a minute, I just made a motion, he didn't get a second, and now you're going.
I'll second his motion.
Well, you can't do that now.
have to make a motion now.
Golly, take, Carolyn.
It just took me a minute.
Well, I've got a motion, is anyone gonna second that?
Please say again what the motion on the floor is.
My amendment to the motion, the current motion on the floor is that we would revise the location for the February 5th, 2018 work session and have it located at Mount Pleasant Middle School. The second part of that motion is to move the March 27th budget meeting to March 20th. Then that was approved. That's the approved motion that's out here. I asked to amend it, and I just wanted to amend the recording of the February 5th work session at Mount Pleasant Middle School, so we would not have to deal with the extra costs of that activity. That was the only thing that I asked for in that motion.
And so you need a second on that motion.
I need a second on that motion.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
It's not so complicated now.
Just needs to be laid out.
And Ms. Carpenter, you know that I allowed time, and you just
I
didn't make the,
know,
you just,
I know.
she's thinking about that San Francisco
I
trip.
know, what can I say? Oh, yeah, we're getting there.
All right, so we now have this motion with the amendment. Any more discussion on the amendment? Hearing none, all in favor of suspending the TV activity at the February 5th work session at Mount Pleasant Middle School, say aye.
And that's
Aye.
the whole thing, it's not just.
No, you have to do the amendment first.
Yeah, you're voting just on Mr. Shoemaker's amendment first, then the amendment. So we have an amendment to the amendment.
No, we just have an amendment. Oh,
Well, you have an amendment to the motion.
yeah.
Mr. Walters' motion, which you're now made a motion to
I'm
amend.
amending his
It's been
motion, and I
seconded.
need
So
to
you're
vote on my
voting
amendment.
first, you're voting on your amendment.
Yeah, so all in favor of suspending TV activity at Mount Pleasant Middle School on February the 5th, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, that motion does carry 6-0. Now we have the motion before us that Mr. Walter had offered. It's now been amended to change those two dates, or the location and the date. All in favor of this motion, say aye.
Now, what is the date again? Because I've heard.
February the 5th.
Is it February or March? Because I've heard.
February
March.
the 5th, Mount Pleasant, and then March 27th is going to change to March 20th.
Okay, I've heard, okay.
And they're both Tuesdays, so it's not going to inflict
Okay,
on the Wednesday
okay,
night activity. All right, so all in favor of this motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. All right, so we have adjusted the calendar.
Mr. Chairman, make a
Yes, sir.
motion that we move all work session seating back up to our current location.
Now, that's
Second that.
CC.
Now get it second.
Now, motion to move work session seating to the business meeting seating arrangement. How's that? All right, is there any discussion on this motion to return to our normal seating at work sessions? Ms. Furtenbaugh?
Yes, I will just say that I think the nature of a work session, whether it be for this board or in a work environment, is that it is a little less formal, that you're able to talk directly, sitting side by side, face to face with the folks, and not sitting up versus down. So I think it defeats the purpose of what we hope to accomplish in a work session.
Mr. Walter?
And with Dr. Louder not being here, and he was the one that proposed that, I think he ought to have an opportunity to explain, to discuss that before.
There was no
Mr. Powell.
proposal. It was just changed. We never voted to change it. We never voted to go down. So now we about every other month, we have a complaint about it. You know, at one point or another, it's inconvenient for either the presenters or the guests or the board members, or being able to have presentations that are tight, like last week with the robotics and that kind of thing. This would have been perfect to have them, you know, have a demonstration or whatever. It just seems like there's complaint after complaint, and I don't know what we gain by putting us down on the floor. And plus, we've proven it based on Mr. Walters' change in wording from the minutes that we vote sometimes at work sessions. So, I mean, we act as if it's a business meeting and occasionally when we vote. So why not just make the seating standard? That's kind of my thought.
Mr. Chair, I would ask on behalf of the staff and Dr. Louder that there's at least discussion with him about it. It was something that he was somewhat passionate about initially, wanted a work session to be as Ms. Furtenbaugh described. So I just ask from the staff's point of view, again, board can do and make any decision, but from our point of view, we'd love for Dr. Louder to have the opportunity to speak to that.
Board members, Mr. Powell and Ms. Carpenter, do you think that we could delay this motion until we give Dr. Louder a chance to weigh in? We could actually have a board discussion, a formal discussion. We'll put it on the June agenda.
This was not on the agenda to change the first time. This was a unilateral decision made without board input, without board discussion, without anything. So, you know, I don't see the problem in going ahead and making a decision and go with it.
All right.
Well, you know, if we have a sliver of respect for our superintendent, then it warrants waiting until Superintendent Louder returns so that he can voice his opinion on this arrangement. Frankly, I don't think it matters a jot, not a jot. It does not change the dynamics or the chemistry or the attitude we demonstrate and display toward each other, not a bit. But Dr. Louder is passionate about this, and I can't fathom the wisdom of doing this when he's not here to speak up about why he believes it is a important arrangement. I think we should table this until a future date. And if it is appropriate to make the motion, I think I'd like to make a
Well,
motion
the
to
motion is,
table.
there's still a motion on the table right now that we have to act on. All right,
I believe that a motion to table, a motion which has been made and seconded, I believe is possible. I'm probably wrong.
Yeah,
Dr.
no, I'm looking at the, this is the little brush up on parliamentary procedure. We've never cited the rule so much, but 2340 does allow procedural motions while a substantive motion is pending, and one of those is to defer consideration. A substantive motion, you can make a motion to defer consideration to a future time. You can either send it to a specific date or just in general to defer consideration. That is a procedural motion, which is in order while the other one is debating. So procedurally, that I believe your motion to defer consideration would be in order, Mr. Harrison.
And would be the first vote that we would take.
You would first to vote on the motion to defer consideration. If that fails, you would go ahead and vote on the substantive motion. unless someone wants to make an amendment.
Does the motion to table require a second?
so
please?
right
Yes,
now
all motions require
right now, we
seconds.
have a motion before us, but has not been seconded that Mr. Harrison made. Wait a minute. Mr. Harrison made a motion to defer consideration of this motion until a later date, and he did not specify a date at this point. Is there a second to Mr. Harrison's motion?
I will second that.
Okay, Ms. Furtenball will second that. Any more discussion on this motion?
So then it probably makes sense to discuss it. So it's a topic that we should discuss, so.
Okay. All right. And I agree. I think we should at least have a discussion with Dr. Louder, and then when we make our decision, it's a good decision. All right, so voting on this procedural motion to defer consideration of the work session seating until a later date. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Nay. All right, so that motion to defer passes 4-2. And
What is the later date? Can we set a
I'll
date?
put,
Well, the motion to defer consideration does not set a date. There is a separate motion to defer to a specific time. The way the way our board policy works is a motion that has been deferred expires 100 days thereafter unless the board adopts a motion to revive consideration. A motion to revive consideration is in order anytime for 100 days. So basically, you've got 3 months where someone could bring a motion forward to revive consideration, and then we're back in the discussion.
Or any one of us can request it be on the next agenda.
You could
for next
also
meeting.
simply make a new motion. That's right. So it's
It
not,
doesn't have to be a motion, you could just request something to be added
you
to
could
the
add it
agenda.
to the agenda. That is correct, Mr. Walter.
so,
Can I make a motion, we add it to the next work session agenda?
all right. Mr. Powell makes a motion to, and Mr. Walter seconds, adding this to the June work session agenda.
Will we be seated up here or seated down there?
All right, so.
As we've
any-
proven, it's up to the superintendent. We don't get a choice.
Any more discussion on this particular motion? Ms. Furtenball?
The only thing I'll say is, since Dr. Louder is not here, and June is an extremely busy month for staff and for board activities, I guess I'd rather not commit that it be on June right now, just because of everything that goes on in this last month of school. So I think we can certainly do it within the 100 days. I guess would rather not commit to it on the next work session, so.
Pick a date, Cindy, and we'll commit to whatever date suits you. I'll amend my motion.
I closed mine already. What's the July, we only have one meeting in July, right? There's only one in July.
July the 10th. It's a Monday, the second Monday in July.
How about July 10th?
I agree.
Okay.
It killed him to agree.
July 10th. Okay, so Mr. Powell and Mr. Walter, did you second the the change date? Okay, so Mr. Powell, Mr. Walter have asked to add a motion to have us speak to the work session agenda seating on July 10th. Any more discussion on this? Seeing none, all in favor of this motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. That motion is carried. We'll have this on the work session agenda on the actual agenda for July the 10th. Board members, we've come to that time of night where I think you're all ready.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
Is there some discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? We're adjourned.
Oh.